All right, guys, the final key knowledge point for this outcome. So, as I said in the very first video, there are only five. Okay, so technological and global issues which may affect decision making when establishing a business, such as generating customer databases, contact with overseas suppliers, and contacts with overseas retailers. All right, jumping straight in. So, technological issues. Again, this content is not new to you. If you look back at the second outcome of Unit 1, external factors, operating macro, technology, and global were both in there. All right. So, how is technology impacting our decision making when starting a business? So, we need a system to store all information. We need staff to be able to access the system. It can increase productivity and efficiency, and we must be able to have a secure network to provide to our customers and our employees. All right, so specifically looking at customer databases, all right? So collection of various pieces of information from customers. Some of you may already be part of a customer database. If you get emails from a business, you are, okay? Businesses will need to collect and track customer data, so their personal info, past purchases, buying habits. So there has actually been an update on the iPhone recently, where the phones are now actually asking you when you are using an app whether or not you will allow it to track your buying habits, past purchases, and personal info. You can select don't allow, but often businesses want to be able to do that. All right. Customer databases enable businesses to make decisions on what goods or services will be most successful for them to offer and when they will sell these goods or services to attract customers. Customer databases can also be used to identify and implement strategies to attract potential customers. So again, with this one, we're wanting, as a business, when people search up a certain product, that the business will then be able to identify what they're interested in buying and provide a discount to a specific product to encourage a sale. Okay, so if, for example, you may see products that go with this item or products similar to this item, and it may offer 10% discount. Or if you log into a website, it may say sign up today to get 10% off. Okay, that's all prompting you and incentivizing you to purchase from the business. All right. Ultimately, a well-managed customer database will enable a business to effectively identify and satisfy customer needs. Okay, that is pretty much, if you take nothing else from this, it is what the customer database's purpose is. All right, but on the flip side, businesses must consider the issues. So customer privacy. That is pretty much the biggest issue when it comes to customer databases. All right. How are you ensuring my information is going to stay private? What sort of information do you need and why do you need it? How are you going to promise me that my information is not going to be hacked? All right. So the main consideration of customer database includes an individual's personal information, such as their name, address, and other contact details. You need to ensure as a business that this information is not breached, and this is actually a legal issue, okay, as well as it being customer expectations. All right, so technological issues. The issues and the explanations of how it's going to impact on decision making. You should at least write down 3 of these, okay? Storing customer data, storing sensitive customer information securely, accessing customer data, so who can see it, buying customer data from other companies and generating its own customer database. So if you've got your own customer database, how are you making sure that it's secure? All right. And then you've got the advantages and disadvantages of technology. So again, these are all super important. You know that when we give you tables, we're not just giving you them for fun. All right. Enables businesses to predict customer demands and needs. You can maintain relationships with customers by meeting their needs, can collect data on who their target market is, can increase their market by targeting potential customers by offering deals or loyalty programs. All right. So often at the toy shop, people would come in and say, yep, I've put it on my account. So I didn't need to keep the receipt. Our issue was our system didn't actually enable us to look at customers' previous purchases. And that obviously did sometimes cause some tension for customers because it meant that they then lost out. Yeah. Disadvantages: poor management of customer databases can lead to private customer information being hacked or leaked. Businesses can get a negative reputation if customer information is released. It can be time-consuming to gather the relevant information, and it is expensive to purchase and implement the software. All right. So I'm sure that often if you, for example, have an account at Rebel Sport, the first purchase is not a good indicator of what a customer is then going to purchase next time. All right. It does take time. They need to collect lots of information on each customer in order to then be able to make targeted products towards consumers like that. All right. So it can be expensive to purchase and implement the software. We obviously know that. Okay. Probably one of the biggest drawbacks of using technology is that it is expensive. All right. Okay, next one is contacts with overseas suppliers. Now, this is something we do look at in Year 12, and it is something that the Year 12s did make errors with, okay? So if you are asked to define, you must say individuals or businesses that sell raw materials or resources in a country overseas, okay? So often what happened was we saw definitions where it was pretty much just the supply definition, but it made no reference to overseas, okay? You need to make sure that you are explicitly stating that, all right? The benefits, as we said in the supplier video, it is often cheaper and it can enable businesses to source high quality resources. Again, please be careful with your language in these questions, okay? It can often be. Do not say it is cheaper and it is going to mean that they can source high quality resources, okay? Because that's not necessarily true. That's the aim, but you need to make sure you are saying can or may or potentially, not does or would or are, okay? When generating contacts with overseas suppliers, a business owner should identify what resources it actually needs to purchase and then work towards the most appropriate supplier. All right, and then again, you've got your issues. So legal and government restrictions on trade. They may actually be cheaper because there is less tax in order to buy from overseas suppliers. If you've got a free trade agreement with them or if they've got low importation fees, then you've got your CSR considerations. So are they being ethical towards their employees? Is your consumers going to think that because you are supplying from overseas that the environmental impacts are going to be greater? All right. types of inputs offered by suppliers. So a business may choose to buy resources from suppliers that offer the specific inputs needed. So instead of it being, I don't know, an example, if you just need plain flour to make a cake, is it just any type of plain flour, or do you want a specific type? All right. And then you've got your language barriers as well. So a business may choose to work with suppliers who speak the same or similar languages to improve communication. And you may need to introduce multiple channels of communication to reduce language barriers, whether that be through email so that they can translate, or do you need to actually employ someone to translate? So that can also be a really expensive consideration as well. All right, advantages, disadvantages. So wider range of suppliers to choose from. If you can pretty much access any suppliers from any country, you are going to, of course, have a wider range of suppliers and supplies themselves. Your reputation can improve if you can't source ethically sourced inputs locally, but you can overseas. That actually can benefit your reputation. You can access supplies that you may not be able to access locally, and it can be cheaper. All right, we already know that. The disadvantages is that if the supplier all of a sudden starts to behave unethically, it can actually then have a negative impact on the reputation of the business themselves. They may need to pay for employees to travel or hire employees overseas to make sure that the supplies coming in are meeting the expectations. Can be time consuming. So as we know, communication issues, whether that is based on language or if it is based on time differences. If you have a business that is in England, that's pretty much a 12-hour time difference. So therefore having to work out when communication is going to work best. And if you're going to have to work at different hours of the day to make sure that that is being achieved, can be super time consuming. Government restrictions can cause a business to pay extra money to obtain suppliers. So you actually may need to pay more if there is no free trade agreement or if importation costs are quite high. And travel expenses to actually bring in supplies. So remember, expenses can be both financial and environmental. All right, and then the last one, contacts with overseas retailers. So overseas retailers are individuals or businesses which sell goods and services directly to customers overseas. As globalization has increased, so has competition with other businesses. Businesses are expected to consider how they will compete with both domestic and international retailers, because obviously if a business is selling products in their local country for a competitive price, why would you then be going overseas to purchase from a retailer there? All right. Generating contacts with overseas retailers enables businesses to sell their goods and services to international customers. If the retailer agrees with the proposed idea, they will enter an agreement. A business would then sell specific goods and services to retailers, which are then sold to customers. All right. Legal and government restrictions, the expectations of retailers, and their activities can affect how a business sells goods and services overseas. All right. So in terms of getting contacts with overseas suppliers, that is when you are going to be bringing the inputs into your country in order to then sell on to your local customers, in comparison with overseas retailers, where you are actually selling your product to a shop who are then going to sell it on to their customers. Okay. So potential issues, you've got government restrictions on trade. So as I said, export fees for this one, because you're actually selling, you're exporting it overseas. and then you've got your free trade agreement as well. Whether that would benefit or disadvantage a business will depend on whether or not a country has a free trade agreement with that country. All right. How you can meet retailer expectations. So, is your packaging up to scratch? Is the actual product itself up to scratch? What quality control methods do you need to implement? And then you've got your CSR. So, making sure that you do your research about the retailer themselves. All right, and then the final part is your advantages, disadvantages. So an advantage of a global retailer, again, you have global access to customers. Yeah, you can access more customers because you are working online. Again, not new information, just look back at the last outcome. Can also save time and costs if you choose to sell through a retailer to customers instead of opening up a store overseas. Disadvantages though, similar to the overseas suppliers, if all of a sudden the retailer starts to engage in unethical behaviour, they're not treating their employees very well, they have a really negative impact on the environment, that can always impact on the reputation of the business as well. You've got no access to your own employees, so the customer service can be impacted if their version of customer service isn't the same as yours. That can always cause conflicts as well. And finally, the loss of control over product placement and marketing. So you may send your product over to a retailer and they put it in the deepest, darkest corner of their shop. How likely are you to sell it there? Yeah. And the way that they market their business or their product is up to them. So how they're going to market your product may not be what you had envisioned either.